Welcome back to the Deep Dive.
Great to be here.
So if you're listening, chances are you're trying to fine-tune your fitness, maybe understand a bit more about the deeper mechanics of training.
hmm
And today we're tackling something I know a lot of people are curious about. This whole idea of fasting and working out. Like, can you actually train effectively, get fitter when you're in a fasted state?
Yeah, it's a big question.
I know.
And we've been digging into it, looking at the research, the studies on energy use, how it all plays out practically.
Right. Trying to see how these two things, fasting and exercise, actually mesh together.
Exactly.
So our mission for this deep dive is pretty clear. Pull out the really key stuff on how fasting hits different kinds of exercise, what it means for keeping muscle, for recovery.
And basically help people figure out if and maybe how fasting could fit into their own training plan.
Perfect. Okay, let's start with the basics then. Energy. When we exercise, what's actually fueling the movement?
Okay, so think of your body as having a couple of main fuel tanks. Primarily, it runs on carbohydrates and fats during exercise.
Right.
Now, normally, if you've eaten somewhat recently, you're in what we call a fed state. The body tends to go for carbs first.
The quick energy source.
Yeah, especially when you ramp up the intensity. Carbs are just easier, faster to access.
Okay, so that's the standard picture. But what happens when you're fasting? When those easy carbs aren't readily available?
Well, that's when the body has to switch gears, Your stored carbs, your glycogen start running low.
So it needs another option.
Exactly. It has to start tapping more heavily into fat stores for energy. And what's interesting, some of the science suggests that if you regularly train while fasted, your body might actually get better at burning fat. It improves what's called fat oxidation. It's like becoming more fuel efficient on fat.
Huh. So training your body to be a more effective fat burner, that sounds like it could be useful, especially for maybe endurance athletes.
That's where a lot of the focus has been, yes.
Which leads us nicely into the next bit. How fasting really impacts different kinds of exercise. Let's stick with endurance for a moment.
Okay. So for endurance athletes, runners, cyclists, that sort of thing, this enhanced fat burning could be a real plus.
How so?
Well, if your body gets better at using fat, it might mean you don't burn through your limited carbohydrate stores quite as quickly. You potentially spare glycogen.
Which could mean delaying fatigue, right? Having more in the tank later on.
That's the idea. You might be able to maintain your performance for longer.
I think I saw mentioned in our sources a review looking at this specifically.
Yes, there was a systematic review. Its conclusion was pretty interesting. It found that intermittent fasting didn't seem to hurt overall sports performance.
Okay.
And in some instances, it actually helped improve body composition, less fat mass, which, indirectly helps endurance too, less weight to carry.
So the body seems pretty adaptable then.
It really does.
Okay, that's endurance. But what about the other side of the coin? Like really intense stuff, sprints, heavy weightlifting. How does fasting play out there?
Yeah, that's where things can get a bit different. It's a good distinction to make.
Why is that?
Because those high-intensity bursts, lifting heavy weights, they rely heavily on that quick-burning fuel, on glycogen.
Right, the stuff that's likely lower when you're fasting.
Exactly. So if your glycogen stores are depleted because you haven't eaten, it could potentially make it harder to hit those peak power outputs.
So maybe feeling a bit less explosive or finding that last heavy rep harder?
That's what some studies suggest, yeah. There has been research showing a decrease in performance for certain high-intensity exercises during fasting periods.
But is it always the case?
Not necessarily, and this is important. Individual results really vary. How long you fasted, what your training background is, even just your personal physiology. It all plays a role.
So it's not a simple yes or no for high intensity. More like a maybe proceed with caution.
That's a good way to put it. Endurance might see benefits. High intensity might be more challenging.
Okay. Now, something that comes up constantly, especially for people focused on strength or aesthetics, is muscle loss. Big fear with fasting. What did our sources say?
It's a super common concern, definitely. But the good news from the research is that intermittent fasting doesn't automatically mean you'll lose muscle.
Oh, really?
Yeah, quite the opposite in some studies. They've shown it's possible to maintain or even slightly increase lean muscle mass while losing fat mass through intermittent fasting.
That's actually quite reassuring. So it's not a trade-off you have to make.
Not necessarily, no, but but there are key things you need to do.
Like what? What are the essentials for keeping muscle while fasting?
Okay, two crucial factors. First, resistance training. You absolutely have to keep lifting weights or doing some form of resistance exercise.
Why is that so critical?
It sends a signal to your body like, hey, we need this muscle. Don't break it down for fuel.
Right, the stimulus to preserve it. What's the second factor?
Protein. You must get enough protein in during your eating periods. That can't be understated.
Because protein is needed for repair and building.
Exactly. It provides the actual building blocks. If you fast and skimp on protein when you do eat, then yes, you risk losing muscle.
So it's about the combination. Train hard, eat smart during your window.
Precisely. Strategic exercise plus strategic nutrition.
Makes total sense.
Okay.
Okay, we've covered fuel, performance, muscle. What about recovery? How does fasting fit into getting ready for the next workout?
Recovery is huge, right? It's where the actual gains happen, and fasting can influence it,
How?
mostly through its effects on hormones. During a fast, insulin levels are typically lower,
Oh.
and sometimes you might see a temporary increase in growth hormone.
And these hormonal shifts,
Yeah.
what do they mean for recovery itself?
Well, there's some research suggesting these changes might enhance certain metabolic adaptations over the long term, which could potentially benefit recovery processes.
Might, so it's not guaranteed.
Definitely not guaranteed. And this is really key for listeners. How fasting impacts your recovery is very individual.
Depends on the person.
Absolutely. How hard you trained, how long you fasted, what you ate, how you slept, your genetics. It's a complex interplay. There isn't one single answer for everyone.
So it really comes down to paying close attention to your own body then.
You nailed it. You have to be tuned in. How are you feeling after workouts? Are you bouncing back okay? Or are you feeling constantly run down?
And adjust based on those signals.
Yes. Adjust your fasting schedule, maybe the intensity of your training on fasting days, your nutrition. It requires being mindful and willing to tweak things.
That feels like really solid, practical advice. On that note, let's distill some more actionable tips for anyone listening who's maybe thinking about trying this.
Okay, definitely. First tip, if you're going to try training fasted, start easy.
Don't jump straight into a killer workout.
Please don't. Yeah, begin with lower or maybe moderate intensity stuff during your fast. See how your body responds first.
Like a walk, a light jog, maybe some easier lifting.
Exactly. Give your body a chance to adapt gradually.
Okay, start slow. What else?
Hydration. Always important, but even more so when fasting and training. Drink plenty of water. It supports everything. Performance, recovery, just feeling decent.
Right. Easy to forget sometimes.
Very easy. And then linking back to what we said earlier, focus on nutrient density when you do eat.
Maximize the quality of the food in your eating window.
Yes. Make those meals count. Whole foods, lean protein, good carbs, healthy fats, stuff that actually fuels the machine properly and helps with that muscle repair.
So it's not just about when you eat, but very much what you eat.
Couldn't agree more.
And the final point, which we keep coming back to, but it seems crucial.
Listen to your body, seriously. It's the best feedback mechanism you have. Pay attention to energy levels, recovery, sleep, mood. If something feels off, adjust. Don't just push through blindly.
Be your own experiment, in a way.
Very N of one experiment, yes.
Okay, great tips. Let's try and summarize the main takeaways from this whole deep dive. What are the key things listeners should remember?
All right, recap time. First, fasting definitely changes how your body uses fuel during exercise. It can push it towards burning more fat.
Which might be beneficial, potentially, for endurance activities?
Yeah.
Better fat efficiency?
Right. But, second point, for high-intensity stuff, strength training. It might be tougher due to lower glycogen. Performance could dip, and experiences vary a lot between people.
Got it. Third, that fear of muscle loss. It seems manageable. Intermittent fasting can be done while keeping muscle.
If you combine it with resistance training and make sure you eat enough protein during your eating times, those are the non-negotiables.
Okay. And lastly, recovery while fasting isn't automatic. It demands real attention too.
Hydration, nutrient-dense food when you eat, getting enough rest, and really listening to how your individual body is responding, the whole package.
Excellent summary. So where are we headed in our next deep dive?
We're going to stay in the realm of fasting, but shift focus a bit. We'll be looking into the effects of fasting on hormonal health more broadly and what that means for overall well-being.
Ooh, that sounds equally fascinating. Definitely tuning in for that one.
Looking forward to it.
Well, thanks everyone for joining us on this deep dive into the intersection of fasting and physical performance. Hopefully this has given you some useful insights.
Yeah, and maybe some things to think about regarding your own fitness journey. Remember, it's all about finding what works sustainably and healthily for you.
Absolutely. And maybe just one final thought to leave you with as you consider all this. Knowing how adaptable our bodies are How could understanding these energy shifts during fasting actually unlock new ways to personalize your training, maybe push your potential, and ultimately support your long-term health goals?
Something to chew on.
Indeed. Until our next deep dive, keep exploring, keep questioning,